and then before you start painting in color, you paint in a string of neutrals or a string of burnt umber with white. So I could just put some burnt umber and some white on a palette and then mix up a string going from pure burnt umber up to pure white. And then that is a great way of just thinking, and it's so close to this. This is
So you're just working with tone,
yeah,
no color.
no color.
Because that's where perspective comes in, the tonal changes, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Wondered how to
So you're just focusing on values, because if you look at this, there's not, besides his lips and maybe a little bit on his forehead, the whole thing is basically just a series of different browns.
Yeah.
You know, this is a little bit cooler, and then in here it's a little bit warmer, but those are just minor adjustments. So the main thing, I could almost paint this whole thing in a series of neutrals, and this is an old technique of painting, and then on top you just glaze in a little bit of color here, a little bit more chroma. And so that's another good way of thinking of it, is if you want to practice, you could, this is how I would start a student with color, even it out. And then as the painting progresses, and then usually I'll do an underpainting that is very thin. I'm still adding quite a bit of turp. Now the turp also makes it dry a little bit quicker. It thins it, and it also makes it dry a bit quicker. And then my final layer is basically just going to be paint, just oil from the tube. Now all paints are a little different. So Old Holland makes a very sort of thick paint that's a little bit harder to use, whereas Michael Harding or you know, black is always spreads thin, but white can be thicker. So sometimes then I'll have a little thing of medium, which is could be linseed, could be walnut, could be something like that. And then it makes it a little bit smoother to apply. You can just mix it in with your paint, and the application process is a little bit smoother, but you certainly don't want to overdo it. It should be used very sparingly.
Brendan, for that painting there, so you say, oh, first I do this, you know, light color, then do you just do 2 or 3, or are you talking 10 times you come back and go, oh, that's not quite dark enough? And
so for these particular ones, there's I think 3 layers, but I paint them in sections. So I'll do a first pass that's very thin and goes quick, maybe 1 day, maybe 2, and then I'll paint forehead on the next day, eye on the next day, nose and mouth on the next day, jaw on the next day, ear and neck on the next day. So it's painted in parts, so there's not that many layers, but they're painted, it's many
different
days
sections.
of working in different sections. And then at the end, I'll maybe oil the whole thing out, which is a very, very thin layer of oil, just so because paint sinks in, especially browns will become matte. And then you want to put on a little oil to give it its actual luster that it'll eventually have when you varnish it. And then I'll go back in and maybe do a third.
So the oil is the linseed that you're talking about.
So
clear.
all
Clear?
yes, yeah, clear linseed, or this is actually a great product. It's called Oleo Gel from Rublev, and it can sit on your it's linseed oil, but it's actually it's not it's a little bit more impasto or thick than like a liquid. Let's see what I have. And as I added into my paints, it's a linseed oil. It is a linseed oil, but it's got a little bit of like glass in it, and it's thixotropic, which means it thins out as you like move it around. So I'll oil out with this and some turp, and then I'll remove a lot of it, even with a finger or maybe with a soft brush or something. I mix with a palette knife, and I'll make little puddles, little piles. So let's say I set up